Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry that took me a minute.
Good morning.
We're having people join as we speak, so let's give them another couple minutes.
Sure, perfect.
Hello.
Right, so as they're getting on, I want to welcome everybody to today's conversation. I'm looking on my iPad for Debbie.
She is where, well, good question.
There you go. No.
I am here. I just needed to get a cup of tea.
Ah, okay.
Very good.
Excellent, excellent.
I thought it was the cocktail one.
Oh, office though. Yeah.
Oh, that was at night.
That was a different time.
I'm just kidding. I brought coffee.
All right, so welcome everybody to NAWBO Iowa's Coffee and Conversation. Today we're going to welcome Iowa Economic Development Authority's Director, Debi Durham. Very, very proud to have her on the call today. And I must say, very proud to have a woman in that position in our state of Iowa. So so with that, I know that you've been extremely busy, and we are appreciative of you being here today. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Claudia, who's the one that put our meeting together. Claudia.
Very good.
Good morning to all, and thank you for being on this call. It is our honor and privilege to have Director Durham with us this morning. Debbie, I'm so appreciative of all the work you have done for us, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here with us this morning. So Director Durham has been doing this work for a long time as the director of IEDA. And in January of last year, she was also named the director of the Iowa Finance Authority. And this is a big, big job. And if you add a COVID-19 on top of it, it makes it even more interesting, Debbie. So I can't wait to hear about all the challenges, but also the nuggets of goodness that you have seen throughout this whole pandemic and your tenure as a director of those two major entities in the state of Iowa. So with that, I'll turn things over to you. Once you are in a good place with your remarks, we're going to open up for the group to ask questions.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, first of all, Claudia, thank you so much for the invitation. And it is really, truly a pleasure to be here. You know, it was on March 8th that Iowa received notice that we had our first COVID patient. And I remember, the reason I remember that so vividly is because March 8th was my 60th birthday and I was supposed to be celebrating in the French Riviera. So let me just say that did not happen. So obviously, you know, Governor Reynolds from that first moment, and even in preparation, knowing it, that we weren't going to be insulated from this, certainly as a state, had set up a command ops center out at Camp Dodge. And really that first level of contact, the people that she surrounded herself were really those emergency management folks. It was FEMA and it was emergency management, it was Department of Human Services and Department of Public Health, and they were really the front line that worked around the clock to determine how we would respond to this. And basically we were her direction that we would respond in a very measured way. It would all be based on data, not emotion. And I can tell you on any given day, there's 1,000 people in her ear telling her what decisions she should make. But it's always been based on those metrics that were set forth and looking at CDC guidelines and many other things, watching what other states were doing, certainly what was coming out of Washington as far as guidance. It was really about a week and a half after that first group assembled and started working on the dealing with the pandemic itself that I was called in, and I would say those agencies that really touch the economy. So it was IEDA and IFA, it was Workforce Development, it was the Department of Revenue, and we were really brought in to deal with responding to what was happening in our economy. So the first thing that I did was to really follow Governor Reynolds' lead. So it was, we needed information before we looked at initiating any kind of recovery stimulus efforts. So the very first thing I did was reach out to our friends at UNI in the Institute for Decision Making, because we have worked with them for many years on gathering data, very in-depth data on our labor force and our marketplace. And I asked them to survey, and we got out into the field very, very quickly, really before any other state, I have to say. It was a really robust survey that we read, and it had everything from single owners represented to nonprofits to large employers and everything in between. It was a very, very large data set. And in fact, it was so large that, other state and other economic development organizations from around the country actually reached out and said, can we use your surveying tool? And of course we said yes. And now we've got places like the University of Chicago that wants to see our data because we were so quickly into the field to gather it. It's probably one of the largest comprehensive data sets they have today. And so as that was being released, before we did the final, deadline on that, I was getting real-time information, and it became very clear that we had two objectives from the economy. We needed to keep people employed absolutely as long as possible. And the second thing is we knew that we were dealing with a short-term, if not long-term, certainly short-term cash flow, longer-term liquidity issue for particularly those consumer-facing businesses that were being forced to close by proclamation. Now, also understanding that many of these businesses have like a 2-week lifeline. That's what we were dealing with. And though I have to say I am pleasantly surprised at how quickly money has flowed through Washington, particularly with the SBA programs, that's not been my experience in the past, right? So we said we need to do something stopgap. Now, I want you to understand that just how significant this effort was and how quickly we got things out the door. First of all, this is a population of the economy that IEDA does not serve at any kind of scale. Yes, we have Main Street programs and we run the Targeted Small Business Program, but those are really small efforts, right? We were talking about giving grants directly to small businesses in a scale that really, completely overwhelmed us all. And so we drafted a program. Now, also, I want you to keep in mind that I have 95% of my staff working remotely and during this whole time. And as Claudia knows, I am all about culture. I'm all about building and making sure that our team members feel valued and appreciated and thrive. And we were, luckily, as government, completely ready for this. We were always prepared for some kind of natural disaster. So about 80% of our staff already had laptops that were required to take home every evening. We were already testing teams to work remotely so IT could work out any issues. And we were in the process of going paperless. So when you think of all of that, we were probably, in many cases, I will say, better than some of even I've heard our private sector peers. But you miss that value of working together. So I'm asking them to draft a program, not, by the way, endorsed by the legislature. This was all done under emergency powers by Governor Reynolds. And for them to begin to vet this overwhelming response. And it exceeded all of our expectations. Not only just the volume, but when we really looked at need. This was not a first come, first served program. I didn't think that did justice to the needs of our small businesses. So it wasn't first come, first serve. And it wasn't a lottery. Like, if we drew your name, you got an award, right? It was, we went through every single one of these applications and valued them based on revenue loss on the information we got. Now, we opened this round with $4 million. It was very clear to me that was not even going to get us through an hour of this, let alone. So Governor Reynolds quickly added total of 24 million, using almost all the money the legislature appropriated to her to spend on an emergency provision before they adjourned. And so we opened with 24 million. And we went through that very quickly. The need that we assessed early on was about $140 million. And that's somewhat of a moving target because this is a really, really vast number of applications. And I use the word triage purposely in my press conferences because this is not going through the same due diligence that normally we do, because it was all about speed for us, right? It was about, yes, we have to be accountable to taxpayers, and I'm going to get audited on the back side of this. So yes, you do have to sign a contract with us. But the real reason is that we needed to get this out as quickly as possible. At the same time, because we were threading a needle here, at the same time, we had to keep a line of sight to what the feds were doing. Because in my world, what we've seen in other disasters, if we get too far ahead, then the feds can say, well, you know, you've created a unintended consequences with your actions. You have created a duplication of service, or you have supplanted us. And therefore, if you're going to do it, why would the states come in and bail you out? And so we were trying to thread that needle to make sure what we did was not an I got you for our small businesses. And I think we successfully did that. So I tell you, there was a point in time where I became so overwhelmed by what I saw as need that I said, we should shut this down. There is no way we can fulfill this pipeline. And then, you know, the governor's office said, Debbie, we need the data, right? Because we let it run its course and let's get the data. And so we shut it down with a lot of needs and a lot of people upset, and I get that. But luckily, we did finally get permission from Treasury to use part of the 1.25 billion that has been designated to our state to go ahead and work through that. So now we are back in business. We're working through those existing applicant pools, and we're releasing those awards every single day, still following our same process. So we are extremely grateful for that. So that's what we've been doing. Now, the other thing that's been interesting is, you know, I am all about customer service, and we set up a business. Well, first of all, we set up a special web page, www.iowabusinessrecovery.com. And I would encourage you to look at it daily, keep it refreshed, because everything that touches business, right? Everything that touches any kind of relief or assistance to the business community, regardless of your size, is on that side. And it's connected with IWD and things that revenue are doing, what the SBA is doing, but even helpful things. And we also set up an email, businessrecovery@iowaeda.com. And my staff working remotely have not only we've empowered many of them to review contracts, but more importantly, we've turned them into a call center. And I have to say, that's something that is out of many of their comfort zones, because they are personally listening to these stories. And many of them are, as you can imagine, are horrific. And so I believe it's important to have that personal touch to our citizens, to let people know that we do hear you, right? We are operating with this sense of urgency, understanding that we still are government, and there are certain things that we have to do in order to check the boxes. And I'm personally responding to everyone that emails me. And so that's been a very, very difficult problem. And so here I'm trying to manage my team and make sure they're healthy, not only physically, but they're healthy mentally and emotionally as they deal with this. And so I have to say that this has been an extraordinary time for us. At the same time, I honestly believe when I leave at night and I lay down that we are making a difference and we are doing what we were called to do. So that's what we're doing on responding. But at the same time, on a parallel path, we're really looking towards recovery and reopening our economy, right? So what's next? And that part gets me excited, right? Because that's what I do. And you know, the strategic planning and all of these things. And honestly, what we're learning from this, I mean, think of all the things that we needed to be doing anyway, that this has really pushed to the forefront. And I'll give you an example. You know, telemedicine. We are a rural state. We need to be embracing telemedicine, but we hadn't been doing it. It was not something consumers or even our delivery system was particularly comfortable with. That's changed, right? That's been completely turned upside down. And so we should embrace that. or how we deliver education now through remote learning. I mean, university's been doing it for years, but now we have to be prepared to do it at a K-12 level, so none of our students are left behind, and we have this equality across the state. And so it has showed us where, quite frankly, our weaknesses are. Like, we know broadband is a priority. It's always been a priority of the governor, but I think now it is a thread that weaves all of this together, right? We have to have and it's not just check the box, we have broadband. I say to people, that's like saying you have good schools. People expect it. It's really about broadband and connectivity at a level to move data that will transform the way we do manufacturing. It's manufacturing 4.0. It will transform the way we deliver medicine and we deliver education going forward. And so that has really shown us that that is an investment. And then there's all kinds of other things that we're learning from this that, quite frankly, make me extremely optimistic about the future. And let me just close with one final thing, that Iowa was in a really strong position going into it. I meet with the governor about once every 2 weeks just to keep her informed of all the things that we're doing over here. And I had said to her in December, I said, I have to tell you, Governor, I predict, and I've been doing this gig a long time, that we will have one of the best economic development years we've ever had across the spectrum. I mean, we were poised to see big new investments come to town, seeing major legacy companies looking at fairly significant investments, seeing a increased activity in our innovation and small business platforms. I just predicted it. And now obviously that's changed a bit, right? But they're still there. Those projects are still in the pipeline. The sooner we can open up the economy, I think the better. So, they're still there. And so we went into this extremely strong. We went into it with not only a balanced budget, but with large cash reserves, certainly better than most states that I can think of. And so I do believe that we will come out of this stronger when we are able to reopen this economy. So I'm going to just stop, take a drink of tea, and then answer any questions or thoughts, concerns, things that you're seeing that we should certainly know about. I would welcome all of that.
Thank you, Debbie. That's great. So for our members on the call today, when you have a question, please unmute yourself, ask the question, put yourself back on mute so we can make sure that everyone can hear what Debbie and you have to say. Who wants to go first? Cassie.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for your leadership. I don't envy you in this position at all and having to hear the stories. I own East Village Spa, and my question is, with the SBA, because of the incredible demand for the EIDL advances, they quickly realized they couldn't give the maximum $10,000 to all of the business. And my question to you is, how did you decide to award so many businesses the maximum $25,000? And just how that decision, or if your department had ever considered spreading it around a little bit more? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so, that's what I said. We did have a conversation about that, again, just giving everyone an award and be done with it. But because we didn't choose that way, we actually screened all of them. They were actually screened based on the revenue numbers they gave us, the 1 to 4, right? And it was based on, we were looking at 200% of revenue loss that got the 4. So what you're going to start seeing going forward, we're still working through 4s, by the way. So you'll still see most of them that it came out yesterday. We've got a group ready to release today. You're going to still see 4s. Then we're going to start working through the 3s. And so you're even if you look at it though, a 4 doesn't always the 4 doesn't always mean 25,000 maximum. If you actually look at the awards we're doing now, they're kind of all over the map, right? Because it's based on your industry. So that's how it was looked upon. Again, we always felt that we would be able to use the Treasury money, right? So that's why we didn't shut the application down, and that's why we chose not to just give everybody an award that came in, right? But we had to still wait for them to officially give us the nod. So we always had that as a backstop, that we thought that that would happen based on our conversations with Treasury. But this was what's so crazy. We had money in the state's checking account that we couldn't even touch. Tell me how frustrating that was, because I had to have a week that I stopped giving these grants at when I know I had money in the bank. And the reason why is because they wouldn't give us guidance. And without guidance, again, what could happen to the state is them to say that is not something we're going to accept as a COVID expense, and therefore the state has to pay it back. That would have been problematic. So you're going to see us work through the list. Now, there are a number that are ineligible, and those will be identified late at the, we're going through that now, screening the list. So I would say stay tuned. If you're in the queue and you're eligible, right? If we had questions about your application, and this is the other thing we found, because we knew we had limited money at first, the triage went like this. Are you eligible? Yes or no, right? If you're not eligible, you went to a different file. Was your application complete? And if it was missing information, you got put in an incomplete file. And at one time we had 4,000 applicants there, right? And it was the only way we could say, these other ones are ready to go. This stack, we need more information. We are now working through the ones that had incomplete information. The stuff that's minor, we're moving forward, and we saw several 4s in that list, unfortunately, that, we wish we could have done earlier. And then some of them are missing financial information. We're now having an entire accounting team go through and contacting them and pulling up the information. Let me tell you, would I do this different? Oh yes, I can guarantee I would do this different, right? But I also really believe in integrity as far as the program and consistency, that this is how we've done it. This is how we're going to continue to do it to the end. The question has been asked, will we open another round? And not this round, right? Would there be something else coming during this recovery task force? Possibly, yes, but not right now. So that's how it was done.
Thanks.
Quick question or maybe comment. It's kind of twofold too. Is that okay to go next?
Sure. Yeah.
Please do.
Hi, how are you? Thanks
Good.
for all you do. I can't even imagine working how hard you are right now, but you don't look like it. You look great.
Oh, thank you. And I love the background, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in my basement. I've been spending half my time at work and half at golden openings, but as you know, if there's no people, there's no grand openings. So I don't know what I've been: depressed, sad, happy, glad, all the above. So first of all, I think with all that you're doing, we need to share some positive stories. So I didn't even know if it's legal to say you got it or you didn't get it or how much you got. So I just think that there's a lot of negativeness around this when it's really a positive thing. Like everything you've shared today, there's so many people that have no idea how hard you've been working. And same with the SBA and all the other good organizations. So I don't know if we could put together some positive stories and share it, or have some testimonials from business owners that have received some money. And I don't even know if we need to disclose figures, but I wouldn't mind superheading that, or maybe Pam, she's an excellent writer, and put some volunteers together to write a story and send it to the news. I would be happy to do that, or what you can share and what we can't share. So I don't know what your take is on that, but there's a lot of negative stuff on social media and people that said that nobody's getting any money and it's all make-believe. And every time I read that, I just cringe, and then I stay off social media for a week. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, I think it is a great idea. The money we give, we have to be very transparent. And I want to be transparent. And so all the people that get awards and the amounts are listed on our website. And we are hearing some wonderful stories. I talked to SBA yesterday, and I wish I had that. So don't quote me exactly on this, but it was something like in a 2 weeks time of the PPP that they got out, they wrote more grants than they had in the previous 14 years. Now think about that. That is absolutely staggering. And you have to also understand, none of our systems were created for this, right? We were never created to do mass distribution, and neither were they. So that is astounding. I do want to share a story because, again, I get some great emails. And I received an email from a woman, a business owner that was in one of our rural communities, and pretty well told me I was an idiot for whoever designed this program, right? And yeah, so I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but she was very long in her email, but the tone, that's pretty much what she was saying. And I just paused a moment and said, Debbie, put yourself in her shoes, right? Because she's looking at losing everything. I still have job to come to every day, right? I still have a paycheck that is given to me. And so it made me pause, and I wrote her back and explained our process. You know, after about 3 or 4 emails, you know, we are now to, I'm praying for you. I understand. She will get help. She just, in fact, I think her help may actually be coming this week because we're working through the process. But, you know, I think you have to understand that, you know, people react to this differently, right? They get angry, they get emotional,
Right.
and it's really just to say, I need to be heard, right? I need to know that I matter. I need to know that you are recognizing that I'm here and I need help. So yeah, I would love to share the stories. I've got actually some of our communication team people in here, and we'll definitely follow up on how to do it. And I think it is better coming from somebody else
I
than
do
us,
too.
because yeah, it looks a
Maybe
little self-serving.
NAWBO can
I
help
think.
you with that. And
That would be
then
awesome.
my
Thank
second
you.
question, and I have nothing to hide, you can come take it all actually, but what did you mean when you said that we would get audited? Do you mean on the money that was given to us and how we spent it, or like a whole audit?
No,
Or
no, it'll be us that gets audited. You should not get
oh,
audited.
okay.
It will be the
I don't need
auditor of
that
state will
too,
come
but
in and
it's okay.
yeah, well, yeah, the auditor state will come in and make sure that, you know, we did have a process, that we followed the process, that people had to sign contracts.
Okay.
The other good news is I'm going to tell you, and Craig Polson, who is running revenues, a dear friend of mine, he and I, and the governor agrees, that we're going to ask the legislature when they come back to make sure that you're not taxed on this income. So I think
okay.
that
Was
would be,
my
yeah.
husband had that question.
So right now you are, because apparently Craig Polson doesn't have that authority, and of course certainly I don't, but we are requesting it. And I think from what I've talked to some of the Ways and Means chair, that they're in agreement that we shouldn't tax you on this income. So
Oh, okay. So that's pending.
yeah, that's
Very
pending.
nice.
So let me
Wow.
interject for a minute, Kimberly, and address.
Oh, I'm done. Thank you.
We have been collecting stories from our NAWBO members since spring break, when the first shoe dropped. We started to galvanize our members to really understand what was going on. And you have perhaps received a phone call from one of us board members to check in with you. And there is a form on our website that you can tell your story. So we're not focusing only on positive stories, but we're going to collect all stories, because at the end of the day, we want to know how our members are faring during COVID-19. So we are going to also do something with that story. The intent is to share those stories with our legislators, to continue to do the advocacy work that we're doing, have been doing for many years. Also, we're going to have other speakers, not only speaking to this group, but coming to our meetings in the near future, knock on wood, so we can continue the conversation. So next time we have a meeting like this, we're going to be talking actually with Jane Armstrong on May 12th at 9 a.m. She's the district manager for SBA. So this conversation will continue, and that's why I think it's very important to tell your story. Like Cassie had a point, you had a different experience. I'm sure each one of us have been experiencing this slightly differently. But I echo your comments about capturing the stories, and also how positive some of us have been experiencing this.
Right. And more importantly, the money isn't going to cure anything. People have to think differently about how to run their businesses going forward. I see the money as a Band-Aid personally.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So everything going forward could be totally different.
Correct.
There may have to be a whole new way to do everything we do, and it maybe all be different. So that's how my mind has been thinking. I've been laying awake at night thinking how grand openings, groundbreakings, celebrations are maybe different going forward.
Yes.
Right.
So
It is not going to look, you are absolutely right. This economy is not going to look the same, right? When we start to reopen, and we do have to approach business different. I completely agree.
So that's one of the things, Debbie, that maybe many of us have been thinking about, like you alluded to, Kimberly. How do we pivot? In the near future, it will be so beneficial to us to have some assistance and having some guided conversations on how our businesses can pivot. Some of us have already done so. Some of us are in the process of doing, but I would presume that some of us don't know where to start. So that's one of the things that our national organization, the headquarters, has been talking about with us as well. Just food for thought.
Yeah. Well, I do know that, you know, as we reopen, we'll be providing guidance. I know the Restaurant Association was particularly good to work with us to say, when you reopen restaurants, this is what you should do. And a lot of that guidance you saw reflected in the proclamation and Governor Reynolds' conversation. So we will certainly see that. I think that certainly, you know, many organizations have been reluctant about people working from home. I think we've all seen that this can work. The issue that I see, that the thing that we've had to struggle with working from home is, for my team, is they didn't know when to turn it off, right? Because there's no separation between. And so they saw these massive amount of emails they needed to respond to. And I was getting, you know, responses that some of them were doing that at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And I finally had to say, no, you have to stop, right? I mean, because there is not, so they've had to learn how, and we've had to use our HR team here to really do some training with our employees, is how to make that separation, even though you're right there, right? And so we're learning a lot. But we're also learning that, yeah, we should be more flexible with our team. For those that struggle with childcare and stuff, why not? Now that we've seen we can still deliver and not miss a beat.
So Debbie, have you seen any particular sector? I know we talk a lot about the restaurant industry. I know that they've been significantly impaired, but are there other sectors within the state of Iowa that sort of rise to the top as far as being impacted?
Yeah, so it's really your retail, consumer-facing industries across the board, particularly those that do not have a on website presence, right, an online presence, and that's something that we have got to change with some of our smaller communities and main streets. Certainly, again, hospitality, your tourism industry has been devastated, as you can reach. I mean, even things like motel, hotel taxes are not there, and that funds a lot of our Main Street and tourism programs in the regional and community level. Now, we've had things like home improvement stores are going like crazy. Apparently, the paint store sold out in Sioux City one day because all the honeydews are getting done, right? The other one that we really have to address is daycare. I have to tell you, you know, they've been hit, but most of those were in a bad position even going into COVID-19. I think we as Iowans have to have a fundamental change the way we approach daycare. I think we have to look at subsidizing childcare, right? Because it's so important when you see so many dual income workers in Iowa. And I think it is imperative that we have quality daycares and preschool programs. And so I think that's really risen to the top of my list. And the reason, even though that's DHS, it crosses because I have to have it for the employers. The other thing is, I think that particularly our large employers need to be more engaged in that, from also a subsidization program. Not asking them to run daycares, but I am asking them that we need to figure out a system to where we can have stronger private partnerships. So that's an area that has really been on my mind of what we need to do. Manufacturing across the whole is doing fairly well. You know, they were never shut down as essential services. So that I think is strong, except for some of the food processing plants, the ones that have really dense employee bases, like your packing plants, and trying to work through all of those issues, which is critical because, we're to a point that someone said, well, the cold storages are full, Debbie, why are we concerned? Well, we're concerned because it's a supply chain and we've got hogs ready to come to market. And if there's nowhere to go, you're going to see us euthanizing animals. I mean, that's a horrific thought, right? So we got to keep these things running at the same time protecting people. And so that's been this balancing act. But that's kind of what we're seeing. So some of the things I'm thinking about going forward is like a revolving loan fund is not the correct word. Looking at some kind of loan guarantee for our small businesses that IEDA would not run, by the way, but that we would do in partnership with a bank, right? Because I want the banking system has been remarkable through this financial system. The way they've gotten money on the street, phenomenal. But they have relationships with these people. And if they don't have relationships, small business needs to have a relationship with a bank. And so we're looking at doing some loan guarantees. So we'll set up a loan loss reserve We're looking at trying to get disaster bonds again so we can do large capital projects because those are tax exempt. We did that back in 08 and 09 during the floods and, you know, the financial crisis that we faced. And I think that was probably one of the best and stimulus long-term capital infusion going forward. So those are some of the things that we're working on.
And those things that you're discussing now, would that be part of the recovery task
Yes.
force?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, so I've got, you know, me, I mean, I have like all these white papers that I'm all anxious to share. And it's like, you know, let's get on. You know, one of them is, you know, we need to stimulate our housing market again, right? We had like 1 week during this COVID, a $7 million reservation at IFA for housing. Now understand, we don't refinance, right? This is first time homeowners primarily. And, you know, and so now they haven't closed on that, but it shows to me that the sooner we open the economy, there's still an incredible amount of confidence in the economic structure, but we need to look at putting some money into that space, into the housing space, some kind of stimulus so that we can get that jump start pretty quickly going into these warmer weather.
It's Roxanne Pauls. Good to see you. Thank you
Well,
so much.
Roxanne, how are you?
I'm good. So good
How's
to
your
see
business
you.
doing?
Well, so that's my point.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, I've been involved with humans and disruptive change and really the psychology of
Yeah.
that. My business right now is really about supporting and helping people learn how to flourish in disruption in places where they've never thought about it. So on the one hand, the awareness that's being heightened around what their people really need in times of challenge makes my story easier to tell. And, you know, talk about triage. The organizations I'm working with are like, hold on, Rox, just we're going under for a while and we'll get back to you. So in this time of not being as busy, I have a question. You alluded to the fact that, you know, your people started demonstrating some burnout, making choices that overall will not support their well-being at a time when we need everybody to be in their best thinking.
Correct, correct.
So I'm just wondering, within the task force or anywhere else, have you come across people that are working on the human side of this and the impact of the suffering? And if so, can you just point me in that direction? And if not, I would love to be in a conversation about how I can volunteer to support in that way.
Well, first of all, that is really a great point, and the answer is I'm not sure of that actually. The task force committees that I've seen and the ones that I will be leading, you know, really are, as you would expect, really very economic driven, right? It really doesn't deal with the human side, and I don't remember seeing. I do know the Department of Public Safety had that as their mission. But I haven't seen that per se on a subcommittee, so I'm going to follow up on that.
Okay.
The other thing is, I actually was going to call you anyway. I was thinking about you that as we deal with manufacturing 4.0, right? You're aware of that initiative we're doing, and I don't know if you've met Jill Lippincott, who runs that whole innovation platform. She also leads our TSB. I really want to make sure as we talk about manufacturing 4.0, which is really more about automation and the Internet of Things, and it's where we're going, it's where we have to go. But we also want to make sure we're dealing with the human side of that, right? This is not an either or, right? I mean, we still have to have employees. It's just that it's going to look differently. And I want to make sure from the get-go when we unlaunch, and we're working with Patel to do the economic parts of it, right? I want to make sure that when we launch that, we are very sensitive to that, and that is part of our messaging from the beginning, because it's not. I mean, it really is. They've got to be entwined, both of these, right? That we're taking care of people as we move to, which is really our fourth industrial revolution. I mean, it is. It's here in many cases, but you know, at least with the large legacy companies. But it is those smaller manufacturers in the supply chain that are not ready for this, and that is a role I think the state plays in helping them get ready for it. So anyway, you may want to reach out to Jill. That's certainly a place on that you could engage with us.
Yeah, and Jill, actually, from your team, there were 2 individuals that attended the launch we had in Des Moines.
Oh, good. I remember
yeah.
that. I couldn't go. You
Yeah.
did that down
Yeah.
at Link's place, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Debbie, this is Kathy Towner, and I didn't identify
Kathy.
myself to begin with. Win Communications, Internet Marketing, and co-president at NAWBO, Iowa. So I just wanted to ask, I wanted to follow up back on, you had said there were three, in the triage process, there were three points that you considered. It was eligibility, completion of the application. What was that third thing?
The third one was basically in fact, we have this fancy sheet I put together that, you know, it shows how we can see this, shows the scoring that I could, yeah. So, and so it really does talk about, it is that revenue loss based on that information that we gathered. And so if you fell into this court category, you scored a 4. But again, that didn't normally mean you got the maximum amount of 25,000. It's still based on what that loss was and so forth. So that was how we did the triage. Those were the three things we looked at.
And then you made it clear decisions are still being made, and processes include reviewing of these applications still. Is there going to be, did we already cover this, more money, or
there is
are
more
we,
money?
there will be more?
No, there has been. So
right.
So we had started with 24. The governor gave us 35 million. And that phase 2 opened as of 4/24. And so since 4/24, we have been releasing every day. And I think through, now don't hold me to this, but I think through Wednesday or maybe Thursday, we'll have used all of that 59 million, because that would have given us 59 million, right? I think I'll have 1.9 million left. I have asked I gave her yesterday, and this stuff I'm not going to share because obviously she needs to make that decision. But I have shared what I believe is the remaining in the queue, and have asked for the funding of all of that. And I think we're going to be, I think it was positively received. Can I say that? And so I think we will make that happen. So, so we are getting out. Now, I will say that there will be a few changes in the sense of, because this is no longer a 30-day stopgap. This is now reopening. We are going to ask people, do you plan to reopen if we give you this money, right? So that'll be a new question. The legislature does want to know whether you receive PPP, and that doesn't mean you won't get a grant, but it does mean that we will evaluate it. That will start occurring on the applications that we go through on, I think, Wednesday. That's not changing today. So whoever we release today. The other things that we're doing, and this is because I learned this the first time, and again, in an effort to get money out quickly, that on the restaurants and bars, I should have had ABD look at those, right? So ABD is the liquor licensing people. And from now on, if you fall into that, you get reviewed by ABD. And there are some people that will not get funded because we found liquor violations. They have to sign a box. You'd have to check a box saying I'm a good corporate citizen. I don't have any pending litigation. I don't have, but it is kind of your honor system unless we find out otherwise. And so now we're doing all of that on the front end. So there was in fact, there was a very large group, well, I say over 100 and some restaurants and bars that we're going to put out today that I wanted to get out yesterday, but the reason why it just took longer for the ABD review. So those are being done. We also have a large, if any of you are in a licensed profession, if you are dentists, physical therapists, anything like that, you've seen a few, but not many. We have a large group of those ready to be funded this week, but they have to also go through the licensing bureaus to make sure they're in good standing. So those are things I can't control. And though our team works at a sense of urgency, I can't say that's the same way across. So it's some of this stuff's taking longer. Now that we've had a chance to pause and just catch our breath, we are doing stronger scrutiny on these, as we should have done all along, to be honest. So that's happening. So stay tuned. It's all on the website. Every day after we release, you will get a list. You'll see the list yourself of, and it's for the most part, today you're going to see restaurants and bars mainly again, because we finished that. There'll be a day you'll see primarily professional services, but then the rest of them are pretty mixed on what you're going to be seeing coming out the door.
One more question. Who's next?
Pam was just asking, where do you find the list of the names receiving
Yes.
the amounts?
So if you go, this is again, what if you just keep on your browser or whatever, you know, go to www.iowabusinessrecovery.com. So that's that website page that I told you, a landing page that has everything that touches business. If you go to the relief, the small business relief, any new things we do will be listed there on that. And then if you go down, you can see the list. I think it's listed in alphabetical order from the day that it's released. So at least we tried to do that. That's, again, as soon as we release, then it goes on the site and it's all out there.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Debbie, I am curious, what are your high-level thoughts on federal assistance with the new wave of funds for PPP? What do you predict that will happen?
Well, first of all, and you know, I'm so glad you're going to hear from my friend Jane. We love Jane. She has been so responsive. They've just done some amazing work, and she can share those statistics. They're startling. I think personally, this is with an economics background, right? That I think the PPP is probably some of the best policy I've ever seen in a disaster. And I think it moved quicker than I exceeded all expectations. There were, however, some downside to it, right? And I think obviously when there was classes missed that I think is unfortunate. 501c6s were not included. You know, that's where a lot of your associations and chambers are held. That's my background, so I have a real passion for them, but I think they play such an incredible role in our lives. The other thing that they really didn't account when they set this up on the forgiveness part of it, that, you know, industries that were getting it were actually closed down, right? By proclamation, by civil authority. I think that could have been worked through better. I mean, they're important if you fell into those classes, right? I don't want to be overly critical because overall I think they did extraordinary. I had hoped that we could fix those other things during the last, and we tried, but as far as I know, that was not fixed. Jane would know better than me, but I couldn't find anything that we took care of it. So with that, but now I think it's a matter of, you know, the other thing I could ask you to do is go to the Test Iowa link. And that's something that is also on that page. The more testing that we have, of course, you're going to see more cases, right? I mean, that's the law of probability. But the more testing that we have, the more we can give Governor Reynolds the data that she needs and Department of Public Health to start opening it up, because we have to get back to work. I mean, this is not long-term sustainable. I mean, when you know, you said it well that, you know, this is that stopgap. This is not, we're not replacing people's revenue, right, on any of these things. And so we need to be sensitive to that and do it again in a way that we're not going to be reckless. She's not been reckless about anything she's done. That we certainly don't want to open up and then have to go back in. I think that's the worst thing we could do for just the mental health of Iowans. But once we get the testing and I did the assessment at some kind of scan code.
Very good, Debbie. Thank you so much. We have about 10 minutes, so I wanted to use this 10 minutes just to thank you for your time today and to let you know that you have an open door with us. Anytime you want to pick our brain, anytime you want to be with us, just let us know. We appreciate you and all the work you have done.
Well,
and then
thank you.
Thank you. Second, I want to invite our members to continue to play an active role in this conversation of the recovery that is ahead of us. As I mentioned, Jane will be addressing this group. Please spread the word to other members if you're friends with them. We need more members online so we can ask more questions. And we will be having other members as well. If there is one person in particular that you like us to have here, let me know. As part of the advocacy efforts that we have in place, we would love to engage you in those speakers that you have in mind. So thank you for being a NAWBO member, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Claudia. Goodbye. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.